Hey, and welcome back to Logan, Rando, Aquascaping. I want to wish everybody a really happy spring, and what better time of the year to do a big trimming in our tank. So today I'm going to show you how to sculpt and shape Rotala into really cool hills that'll add to the depth and the sense of scale in your tank. But before we dive into the tutorial, I ask that you just take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're into this sort of content. Now that you've done that, let's get started. So when I'm doing a really in-depth trimming with Rotala, I sort of like to do it in a kind of two-session process. So part one of this process is going to involve just kind of getting the Rotala to the desired height, which is going to give you a really nice canvas to work with. And the desired height that I recommend you take everything to is sort of the maximum height that your ultimate vision needs to be shaped into existence. So to give you an example, if we look at the final vision over here, which is what I will ultimately trim these Rotalas into, you can see the maximum height is just kind of a few inches below the top of the tank. So what I'm gonna do is sort of just get everything to that height, as well as get the beginning of the front to back slope started. So I'll take a few minutes to kind of do that trimming, take a step back, see where things need more work, and then get back in and finish up the job. So after a week goes by, I kind of come back to the tank, and now I'm ready to begin the shaping process. You can totally do it in one session if you have a few hours to spare and you don't mind cleaning the tank out and then going back in. But I find things just get very, very messy quickly, especially in a small tank like this. So in my case, I decided to split it up into two sessions. And now for part two, the fun part, sculpting the Rotalas. So for this part of the process, the first thing you need to do is have a really strong vision. So what I recommend you do is either A, take a picture of your tank and look at that, or just take about like 6 paces back, get down on eye level, and really kind of stare at things and just think and see what comes to mind and what catches your eye. Because a lot of times I find when I'm working with Rotalas, I'll sort of start to see the natural shapes and the curves that I can sort of accentuate to bring out a cool design, and that's exactly what happened in the case of this. Now, if nothing does catch your mind, it's time to create a vision that you'll have to pull from scratch. So you don't necessarily have to have something that catches your eye, but you do have to have something in mind if you want to do a good job. And trimming Rotalas is sort of like trimming hedges, you know, in your front yard. You can do anything with them, and the more you get in there and keep pruning, the more they're going to accentuate that shape and help you achieve the design you set out to achieve. So what we're doing today is mostly going to be in the middle. The left and right are sort of just going to take your eye towards the middle, and we're going to have 2 hills, okay? So hill number 1 is going to be on the right side of the middle, and it's going to be in the foreground. Hill number 2 is going to be on the left side of the middle of the tank, and it is going to be in the background. And those 2 layers are going to create a little bit of intrigue and a little bit of depth in detail in an otherwise really, really small tank. This UNS 5N, it's only 4 gallons. So to me, I think it's really cool to do something like this that adds that nice detail, and it's going to help make the tank look a lot bigger than it is. So what I'm going to do first is kind of work my way from the outside to the inside to begin shaping towards the main subject, which will ultimately be the middle of the tank. So starting on the left, you'll notice that this Rotala is really scraggly. It's been shaded by a combination of floating plants and, you know, being kind of far from the center of the light. It's just looking super leggy. So we're gonna take that really far down and use it to kind of work our way up to the much taller middle. So I'll take a lot of the height down, and what I'm doing is I'm working the height from left to right as well as from front to back. So using your scissors, you know, you can take off larger chunks first and then kind of just go into Edward Scissorhands mode and really shape that slope. So work it from the front to the back and the left to the right, and that'll be part 1 of this design. Next, we're gonna do the same thing on the right side, and I'm happy to say that the Rotala over here is super, super dense and lush. So what you're gonna do is sort of trim that so that it connects with the middle where the real work is gonna begin. So this is where we're going to start bringing out some depth, as well as the 2 layers that I mentioned earlier. And the way we're going to bring out this layering system is through a variation in height. So the right side of the hill is gonna be layered, and those stems are gonna be taller than the left side. And by having them taller, it sort of gives us this illusion of depth. And we can kind of trim the left side into the right to make it look like they're sort of interwoven, as sometimes you see out in the distance, you know, if something is really far away, it can kind of look like the hills are just crisscrossing. That's sort of the vision we're going for today. I'm just kind of shaping the general look of it, and I'm making sure that the stems remain taller than the hill on the left. And then what I'm gonna do is work that same kind of interwoven shape on the left, but I'm gonna take those stems much, much lower to really provide that sense of depth. And this process is not a perfect step-by-step science. A lot of it is just doing some trimming to kind of work out the vision you have in mind, then taking a step back, seeing what spots sort of stand out, not in a good way, and then just taking those down, rinse, repeat. So I did that a lot with this, and before you know it, you'll have the basics of what you're looking for. And the important part about this whole shaping and sculpting of rotalas is it's often a multi-week process. So week number 1 for me was just getting the desired height and the basic shape. Week number 2 was the detail work, getting in there and really bringing out the different layers and the depth and shaping the hills themselves. And in the coming weeks, it's gonna be all about further accentuating the vision and bringing it to life more and more, because as these hills grow in, I'll have more plant matter to work with. So I'll be able to make that sense of depth even more dramatic, and we'll be able to use shadows and variations in height to kind of further bring it out. So when you do something like this, you have to be committed to getting in your tank weekly, and believe me, it's not always gonna take 2 hours, but 10 minutes once a week to just kind of prune those scraggly rotalas and kind of further shape things is really gonna be all you need. But you have to be committed to doing that on a weekly basis. So I don't recommend trying this if you don't have the time, but if you do have, say, 30 minutes a week to kind of work on this, it's like keeping a bonsai. You do that big sort of shaping in the beginning, and then every week it's a little by little. And yeah, it takes a lot of patience, but I think the end result is gonna be really cool. And for a small tank like this, I think it just adds so much to the sense of depth and scale. So let me know down below in the comments if you found this advanced trimming tutorial to be helpful, or if you just kind of prefer to let your rotalas run wild and have that wild style look. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial. Bye-bye.